We're yeah, we just need like YouTube to get its shit together.
Yeah. But getting back to Yiannopoulos, and Christopher, you missed out on so much, but what we were talking about is Milo's modus operandi is to push buttons, get people emotional, get people riled up, make mistakes, and then prove or demonstrate the hypocrisy of the left. And he's been brilliant and very successful at it.
Yeah. I loved on Real Time when he first got the crowd riled up. He just looked right out at him and he goes, "Look, you're all so easy." I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah. And I don't understand. Well, maybe I do understand, because most of his speaking engagements are at university campuses with young people, right? 18 to 20-year-olds, maybe a little bit older. And they fall for it time and time again. They'd let Milo irritate them. And
oh, yeah, to the point of rioting.
Yeah. And the thing is, we were talking about how he doesn't say things that are false, but very misleading at times. Would you agree with that? Or do you think he actually says things that are false?
I don't think he says things that are false. The only thing that he says that I think might be false is that quip that he makes, and it's really just to get under people's skin about that lesbians aren't real. When he says lesbians aren't real, I'm like, Milo, that's a tough one to back up, bro.
I mean, that's so absurd. That just has to be a joke. Like, I just take that as a joke.
Oh man. What's Leon's line? That it is true though that lesbians don't have a sense of humor, and if anybody walks out right now as I say that, that proves my point.
Watch your subscriber count just drop.
Yep, plummet. Doug's a Nazi too.
Well, I'm blonde.
Oh yeah.
I spreche ein klein bisschen Deutsch. But yeah, with PewDiePie, do you think PewDiePie actually believed that those two guys in Africa were actually going to write "Death to Jews" on a sign? And like, are you aware of what happened with PewDiePie, CK?
Yeah. He went to Fiverr to see how ridiculous he could, how ridiculous a thing can I get someone to do for $5?
Right. But do you think he actually believed that would happen?
I don't know. I mean, it was a social experiment. I thought it was pretty outrageous. The responses that he got were like, whoa.
But this is one.
Yeah, I think I don't think he actually expected it, because I don't know his filming strategy. I don't know if he actually I doubt that he actually vets what he's about to film in order to be able to do a genuine reaction. So I don't think he knew before filming whether or not they had done it, because during the video that he's going through all the requests, much more mundane stuff got rejected for not being appropriate. Like people said, no, we're not going to do that. And we don't want to do that. Even stuff that's not even offensive. So when he gets to that one, he just went through a couple that people were like, no, we're not going to do that. That's too extreme or too offensive or not close enough to what my services offer. And then he gets to that one, and that one was fulfilled. I really don't know if he expected it to be after what he went through.
You could tell by his reaction he did not expect that to go through.
No,
but
yeah.
When I saw that, I was like, this is the funniest video I've ever seen. Like, I laughed so hard when I saw that.
Yeah, that is great entertainment.
His reaction is what made it too. Yeah, like
when those dudes rolled out the banner, I was like, whoa.
And that takes skill. That's comedy timing. Those two.
Mhm.
Yes.
Because even he was like, "What the hell is this? Like, this is stupid. Did they even do what I said? This is not what I asked for."
Okay, but here's my point about that whole PewDiePie thing. Let's say it was a bad joke. Who takes responsibility for that bad joke? Is it all PewDiePie? And this is, Billy, the problem I had with your person you were talking to, Crystal. Is it, why do you not assign any responsibility on the two people who actually put the sign up? And I think all of us know the answer to that question, right? From the far left's SJW point of view.
Well, they're not rich and powerful.
Right, they're two poor black people. So we cannot assign a responsibility to them. That's what bothers me, is that there's a impression there that, oh, if you're poor, you cannot make a mistake. Or if you're a minority, you cannot make a mistake. And no, people are people. People make mistakes. Now, I think all this was blown out of proportion because I think it was just, a bad joke. It wasn't serious at all. But this is what I see happening from some, not all, but some on the left, that no, we cannot assign responsibility or blame to any of these bad things happening because they're poor or they're minority. Mm-hmm. Do you guys agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably pretty true.
Totally.
I say it's an influence. I don't think they would go so far as to make a sweeping, all, like, absolute, like, universal statement, but I think that it's an influence for sure.
Yeah, I'd say it's like it's the, like, these, like, social justice warriors, it's their first stop, right? Like, who do we assign blame? Like, what color is everyone?
Yeah.
How much money does everyone have? And they determine blame based on these other things that don't really have anything to do with actual blame.
Like, the obvious question is, if PewDiePie was a minority, a Hispanic female or a black female, and the exact same thing happened, would any of this, with 50 million subscribers, everything else is equal, would the reaction have been the same? My guess is no.
That would be my guess too. I don't like to admit that, but
I mean, the weird thing is even if I think even if he wasn't a millennial, but he was still a white man, the reaction could have been different because people have done this already, and it's been seen as not bad. It's been seen as a statement, or it's been seen as just comedy.
Yep.
Like, it happens. Like, white males do stuff like this with zero repercussion. I think that he is in a position where everyone hates the fact that he's successful.
Yeah,
you're a YouTuber. You're a guy who talks to a camera yelling at video games, and you make more than you're in the 1%. Like,
well, even
it's
Pete,
it's a terrible position.
Even Science Pete was coming down on PewDiePie because he's going, look, he's a YouTuber. Like, why should we be paying attention to this guy? Like, why are we even talking about this? He doesn't contribute to society. And so, Leon, was it you and me, Billy? We were, like, pushing back hard on Pete. Like, no, he is an entertainer, number one. And without entertainment, like, all our lives would be terrible. we need to relax. We need to unwind. And the entertainers, the arts of society is what helps people stay alive and enjoy their life. And he's so influential. And he's a self-made guy. He's a self-made multi-millionaire.
He's legitimately earned everything that he's gotten. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of people disagree, though.
With what?
Why?
A lot of people don't think he's earned it because what he does doesn't deserve that.
Yeah, but where do you draw
Yeah,
the
he
line?
did X
That's not
and
up
got
to them.
X.
The market
Exactly.
says otherwise.
It's not up to them. It's not up to them, but that's how they feel about it. And I think that's why he's such an easier target, is because if people can find a reason to shoot someone down who got successful doing what they love versus working at a job they hate, like that feels good. It's like, oh, it didn't work out for him in the end. Look at what's happening. My hard work doing stuff I hate every day is justified now.
Right.
Because I'm not being posted as an anti-Semite on the Wall Street Journal.
Which is weird because I don't understand why why would the Wall Street Journal do that? That's what I don't get. Like, I get it, he's rich and successful, and like, you know, YouTubers are undermining media, but how does lying help a news publication?
I'll tell you why. They're part of the blue team, and the blue tribe versus the red tribe in America. The blue tribe that has the sacred value of diversity, and PewDiePie took advantage of these two brown kids, and they're trying to show their support to the blue tribe by taking him down and calling him out on that to get points for them to be seen as a good tribe member to the blue tribe. That's my take.
And part of the ironic thing is I am confident that those kids are more successful now than they've ever been because of PewDiePie.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
PewDiePie was willing to fund their own independent venture when they got banned from Fiverr. But because of PewDiePie making a big stink about it, Fiverr unbanned them. And then they got so many more requests because of the publicity.
Yeah. Do you think just Wall Street Journal did what they did because they're jealous? Occam's razor? Like, is it as simple as that?
No, I think that they knew it would get clicks. PewDiePie gets you clicks. If you have something substantial to say about him, all you have to do is have the video to back it up, and they could twist the video enough to back it up and say something outrageous about PewDiePie.
Yeah.
It just seems really weird to me. Like, doesn't now to get back to this blue red thing, right? Like, doesn't Team Blue understand though that these techniques just embolden Team Red to reinvest in the people that they believe in? Like, how come they haven't gotten that yet? Like, PewDiePie is going to come out of this on top.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's already
like
he hasn't lost any subscribers.
He's gaining. He's. I don't know how his rate is going to compared to normal, but he is not losing subscribers. He is gaining tens of thousands a day still. And he was also #1 on YouTube. His response video to that was the #1 video on YouTube trending for I think at least 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it had 99% like ratio.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So the media lost this one.
Yeah, I just don't get it. I feel like I've been watching Team Blue like voluntarily shoot themselves in the foot over and over and over and over again on this stuff. Like, I just saw an article today that Ivanka's Trump's perfume is #1 on Amazon right now. LL Bean, that whole thing when they tried to paint Linda Bean in a bad light, LL Bean's sales went up. Like, every time the Team Blue asks for a boycott, Team Red says, "Fuck you, I'm going shopping."
For Team Blue, the Team Blue has an emperor with no clothes. And if someone calls out the emperor that has no clothes, no, it's the value of diversity.
I don't want to see him naked.
I know, dude, it's so funny.
If someone, the emperor is the value of diversity. If someone calls out diversity as not being a pure virtue, then that's basically just going against the status of the blue tribe. That's That's the thing.
My question for the panel tonight is, will there ever come a day when people won't care so much about Team Blue and Team Red, and that they'll just analyze one politician at a time, one issue at a time? Let's forget about being Democrat and being Republican. Let's stop loving our guy or our gal so much. Will that day ever come?
It's not possible, but you can limit the polarization of it.
Yeah,
And it's because of the Dunbar number. Have you heard of that? How you can only have like 150 people you actually know and actually can say their name. Anyone after that, you have to generalize.
No, I'm not familiar
And
with the Dunbar thing.
When you have to generalize, you have to figure out an us and a them. And the problem is our them is so like polarized, and we see them as so terrible that we can't talk to each other. And it's all like the narcissism of small differences. Our other is people who are so much that we have so much in common with. It's crazy. Like our others are not like people across the world and different belief systems. Our others are the people closest to us. It's crazy.
Like this whole reinvigorating the opposition that you were saying, Chris, is that's exactly what I've been experiencing personally, like within me, after dealing with this controversy over PewDiePie and merely getting demonized for merely trying to defend free speech, which I see as critical to the left cause, which I previously had no problem identifying with. Like I was always raised that, it's kind of like black and white politics. There's left, there's right, there's conservative, there's Republican, and they're opposites of each other. But they're like, obviously there's moderates, there's a spectrum, and I was always more like moderate than left. But after dealing with this, it's just making me realize just because something's left doesn't mean I have to agree with it, first of all, but it also doesn't mean that I don't wildly disagree with it. Like at the core, I figured at the left, we have the similar core. But when I have to argue for free speech, the First Amendment, against someone on the left, then it made me consider maybe people on the right I don't have to disagree with. So I watched more Milo videos because of this interaction than I've ever watched in my entire life. And I find myself agreeing with a lot of what he has said, because I've now broken down the wall of just because he's on the right doesn't mean that I have to disagree with them. There's no longer I no longer feel a connection to the left because of this kind of thing. So it literally broke down the wall of bias. And I was like,
for the people listening, Billy, you need to tell them that you took a test once on how liberal or conservative you were, and you scored one of the lowest in our peer groups, meaning liberal. And you're saying that a lot of what Milo says you agree with, or do you want to take that back, or you're going to stand by that?
Yeah, a lot of what I've heard Milo say, I agree with. Okay. There's probably plenty that he says that I don't agree with, but maybe I just haven't heard a lot of it yet. And to me, I've literally only started investigating him since yesterday, so I have limited experience.
But I think what you're saying is very valuable, because you are a self-avowed liberal, and you're saying, hey, I agree with what this Milo guy is saying, who most liberals, or a lot of liberals, hate. And I'm going to use the word hate. Mm-hmm. Hi, Cam. Let me
hey, Cam,
bring you in here. You came just at the right time, because it seemed like we were all agreeing on stuff.
Yeah. Dun, dun. And Billy, to touch on what you said, what my shift towards listening to people, conservative thinkers and speakers on YouTube and that is watching their banter, especially on Dave Rubin. He's done so much for me. The thing that I like about conservatives is that you can disagree with them, and they don't demonize you for it. They don't call you things that you're not.
Exactly. Yeah. I had the exact when I had this disagreement about PewDiePie, I had the exact same feeling. I was like, this feels worse than disagreeing with the other side, because at least with the other side, it's clear that we just disagree and think different things, and we're going to argue different points. But here we are fighting for what we think is the same thing, and having this nuance, this nuanced difference about how we think we should get it. They want civil rights. I want civil rights. I think free speech, including Nazi ideology, should be allowed to be expressed. They think free speech that agrees with them should be allowed to be expressed. That's the difference there.
Yeah.
So it's still at a fundamental level, we still want the same things, but there's this nuance that's different, and then I get equated to the opposite side for wanting the same thing as them in a different way.
Yes.
That sounds a lot
It's
like
more
not,
frustrating.
that sounds a lot like not free speech.
Yeah.
Right. It's terrifying. That's something I've been having with like a conversation I'm having with a lot of my liberal friends is like, hey, listen, we want the same thing. You just want the federal government to force everyone to do it. And I would just rather see people do it. It's very, I don't know, it's bizarre. It seems like the left just doesn't want choice.
You're an interesting guy, CK, because given your situation, like you're on the government's dole, right? Because you have MS.
And I would love nothing more to get off. I'm not on, on the government dole is the equivalent of being a dolphin trapped in a fucking tuna net.
Yeah, and so it's interesting to hear your perspective, given that you're dependent on the government, but yet you're espousing more of the conservative small government type speech.
Yeah, I'm like working with like a couple like close friends of mine right now to try to like figure out the way that we as a local community are gonna like fix that situation, because like the government's not doing that. It's a trap. It's a mandate to poverty, and it's just a lie. That like I mean, it's all just personal experience or whatever, but man, government safety nets are not there to help people get out.
Yeah,
It's not the way it works.
It's a tough one for me because my sister is in a way worse situation than you are, CK, and yours is really bad. And to be honest, my dad called me the other day and asked me to financially start helping with my sister's medical bills. And this is in Canada, by the way.
Wow.
And and it is really tough on me because, number one, I got financial commitments with my own family, but my sister, because of her religion, has pushed away the MS Society of Canada. Said, no, I'm healed. I don't have MS. And here she lies in a bed, paralyzed. And a lot of her problems have been self-inflicted. Not that she got MS, but that that she is now in a situation where the hospital wants money, and she doesn't have the money to give. And so I'm thinking, okay, what if my dad did not exist to help her? He's paying the bills right now. Who would step it up? Who would step up and pay these medical bills for her? Or would she just die? And so I wrestle with these questions and say, okay, do we need a government in place that would step in and say, no, we're going to pay this bill? Or do we say, let the private market, there are private charities out there who can help, but in my sister's case, she's pushed them away. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, that is tough. I've been like thinking about that whole like private versus public thing, and what's got me sold on like private like nonprofits like doing the things that like federal safety nets do now is that A private organization, their primary goal is to help you to help you. It's not to use you as a placeholder so that they can continue to siphon in this money from the taxpayers. I feel like private institutions are held accountable to the people that give them money, like directly. I don't know.
When I was a fundamentalist Christian, my argument against big government was, yes, you vote, but if you're the person you voted for doesn't win, your team, your party, you are now in a situation where it's forced compassion or forced. If you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail. So my theory was, it is better to give personally to those in need rather than have the government do it, rather than the government send a brown check in the mail or a brown envelope.
I agree with that.
Yeah, because number one, there's more responsibility in it, and number two, if a person is helping another person directly, you actually get a benefit from seeing their face, seeing their gratitude, seeing their joy, that, man, you care about me, you're helping me. And maybe it's selfish to want that, but I like that feeling of helping someone and then they saying thank you. It makes me feel good. And when you have a government welfare system, that does not happen.
No.
And so that was one of my main arguments, and it still is a pretty good argument, I think, no matter what side of the aisle you lean. So Cam, you wanted to say something about how we're all wrong about Milo?
I didn't actually watch any of the stream.
No, we actually been talking about.
Just stumbled into it.
we've been. I'm referring to our Facebook chat earlier today because we've been talking about PewDiePie for most of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I ended up agreeing with most people here on Milo.
But did you understand my point with, like, you were saying, isn't it better for Milo to be more reasonable and instead of purposely pushing other people's buttons to maybe come from a more relaxed, civil type demeanor?
No, I want him to push people's buttons.
Oh, you do? Okay.
No, I think
he's saying, can't he do it without misrepresenting information? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think that approach is really good because I think he's highlighting some of the major issues with the current left, popular views. But I think that it's possible to trigger those buttons, to push those buttons and to make those points without being misleading.
Well, that's an interesting ethical question. Is what Milo is doing unethical if he knows that people will interpret what he's saying in a way that he didn't mean? Because I'm not exactly sure what he...
he does mean for them to interpret it how they interpret it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be using it. So you've got to keep that in mind. He just provides himself the excuse by using, I don't know, how would you phrase it? Like true statistics that he purposely leads people to misunderstand.
He's basically encouraging fallacy. Like, he's like, I'm going to give you information that you're likely to interpret fallaciously, and I'm betting on it.
But he even implies it too. You get to get that clear. Like, he uses it as like a premise in an argument where it could
he leads them to interpret them that way. He's not just saying, here's a statistic that you don't understand. He's saying, here's a statistic and here's a way you might want to interpret it.
Yeah, and so if you think about it like this, I think he uses it as a premise in an argument that he makes, and the premise could only support his conclusion if his audience interprets it in the way that it's misleading. So Like that's what makes it misleading. Like, is that there would be no point in saying it if the audience
Would you accept?
didn't.
Would you accept the greater good argument that let's say he is purposely misleading people, which it sounds like he is, but for the greater good of free speech?
I'm confused about how he's misleading people.
Well, I think we were
Yeah, so
giving.
it's just like one specific instance where he uses the statistic that transgender people are disproportionately affected
Involved
by
in.
sex crime. Or yeah, sorry, involved in sex crime. And he uses that kind of as a premise in his argument against gender identity being the thing that determines what bathroom you use. And the thing that he's saying that's true is that transgender people are disproportionately involved in sex crime, but the argument that he's making relies on it being them being the perpetrators. But when in actual reality, the statistic is about them being the victims in sex crime.
Right, I get that. That's an issue I don't agree with him on.
But I haven't watched the Bill Maher thing, so I don't know. But my assumption, and this is what I said earlier, Cam, was that because I know he's a self-loathing homosexual, he basically has admitted that if I had a choice, I would not be a homosexual because the life is hard. It's harder to be a homosexual than to be straight.
Yeah, especially with all those big hard cocks, right?
What, the black ones?
It's definitely harder. I
See, I threw that bait out there, and you just grabbed right onto it. But so when I heard that he was saying this, I thought maybe he was saying that because of this stat, transgender people should stay closeted. That was my guess of what he meant, which is different than, that
The topic was bathrooms, I think.
Yeah.
In the conversation, and that's when he brought it up.
So you asked
the whole transgender issue is so difficult, though, right? Because like there are a group of people who are legitimately suffer from gender dysphoria, and then there's this huge swath of people who claim to be transgender, like on the YouTubes, they're calling them the trans trenders. So I don't have a problem with transgender people using whatever bathroom that they want. But most of the people making us think about this, I feel like, are not like legitimate transgender people. They're just like have some issues around their identity for whatever reason, and they want to pretend to be something they're not.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about what goes on the internet. I guess I don't really follow that much. But I do, in my personal life, have a number of people who I've been, who I've met in real life, who are transgender, and they requiring them to use the bathroom of the biological sex they were born in wouldn't be. It wouldn't work. So, it would be a worse result, and most people would struggle with it. It pretty much disqualifies them from being able to use public restrooms. But anyway, Doug, you were saying before about what about their, how did you phrase it? Like, can a case be made that being misleading is actually the most ethical thing to do
for the greater good?
For the greater good. And yeah, I think totally. I mean, I don't personally engage in that type of way because I think most often it's a result of like a laziness to find more intellectually honest strategies. But yeah, it's possible.
See, and this is my guess.
Structured in a way that the only way to make the point he's trying to make is by being misleading.
And my guess is if Milo was here right now, I think he would make that argument. He says, yes, guys, you got me. I do throw stuff out there that people come to conclusions not in the way I meant it. and it causes controversy and emotions to get high. But my main point is the hypocrisy of the left, stifling free speech. That's my goal. That's my premise. And every time the left protests by burning cars and trying to get me off campuses, I make that point over and over again. And free speech, I think, is what makes a country great, keeps dictators away, keeps bad thoughts, and more speech is the counter to bad speech. And so he's basically, I think he would make the greater good argument. But I would love to have him on and ask him for myself.
So if you're out there, Milo,
That would be great. I'd love to have a conversation with Milo.
yeah, he might try to make that argument. I don't think. I mean, I think one of the components that you need to convince me of, at least, in order to be able to validly make that argument, is that there isn't some easy substitute that you could use for the misleading. And in the case of what the points he's trying to make, I think that there are easy substitutes. Because I think that there are things that are true and not misleading that you can say that make the same point, that trigger the same outrage and the same desire to silence.
I have a theory.
Yeah, go ahead. Read.
So I think deep down, Milo as a person is just libertarian. He's he's socially liberal, but economically he's conservative. But he's like the typical libertarian, and he wants to help the left become more aligned to the libertarian point of view, maybe. So a way to do that is to become a conservative and just to be a really good villain for the left to try and conquer. So he's trying to, his own podcast says that he's this the internet's greatest supervillain or something. So he's using his persona. I think he's just trying to make himself look as a villain to make the left become stronger, attack his arguments in a more reasonable way. I think that's where
it feels almost like just an extreme satirical character, like the Colbert Report taken to the extreme. He claims to be a conservative, but he was arguing not for the conservative.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Milo's a character. The Milo we see is a consciously created character.
Yeah, definitely. And I said in the chat earlier that that's one of the difficult things when evaluating Milo, is that you don't know the things that he says. You don't know whether or not he says it because he believes it, or if he says it because it's useful or it's part of a character.
And I think we shouldn't care if he actually does believe it. We should treat it as genuine, but do it in a civil way, a way that is good, that would reflect well on liberals. It doesn't matter what his true beliefs are. Just argue with him rationally and calmly.
I think that's his point, is when encountered with a good argument, the fact that he sprinkles in these outlandish and controversial, these very firebrand phrases and personality into good arguments, the left is unable to actually identify the good argument and attack it. It's what happened with me with the free speech thing. I was literally arguing for free speech, and I got called a troll. I literally got called a troll multiple times. They said, stop trolling.
Embrace it, Billy. That's what I did.
It's I just quoted the ACLU here. What?
But what I don't understand, like, do some on the left not see that they're being manipulated by him? Like, he's like the puppet master, and he has them all on his strings, dancing to his tune.
Yep.
And it seems like they're oblivious to it. Like,
He called them out on it point blank on Bill Maher. It was hilarious.
And it's so terrible hearing the audience on Bill Maher. Just if Larry Wilmore said like "fuck you" to
I saw the
Milo,
articles,
and they just clapped and cheered, and it was so terrible.
I saw at least 5 articles on Facebook since then that talked about Larry's brutal takedown of Milo. I'm like, he said,
"Me too."
Fuck you is not an argument.
No, that's an admission that I just lost the argument.
God.
Hey, I lost the argument.
See, is it a bad comparison? Like, Bill Maher had Sam Harris and Ben Affleck on. I see Milo more like Sam Harris and a lot on the left as Ben Affleck. And it just, and this is where I get in trouble because I say it is mostly emotional based. And that when you let your emotions take over your thinking, you lose the argument. You tend to make more mistakes. And I think
it's deeper. It's deeper than just pure emotion. It's tribal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just how do we get rid of tribalism? Or I guess your answer, Reed, is you can't.
You can't get rid of tribalism. It's the secret of human success. You have to just become a better tribe and be more cordial to other tribes.
But when you see what you just said is going to peeve off so many people because you're saying to say that you need to become a better tribe, that means some tribes are better than others.
Yeah.
And
let's talk about it.
That is not allowed. You're not allowed to say that. And it seems to me like you're not allowed to say that anymore.
Unless the other tribe is the conservatives.
Yeah.
Then you can say they're worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting back to PewDiePie real quick or whatever. It's amazing to me how many YouTubers you can find that are calling for the death of all white people. Like all kinds of like racism focused toward the majority, quote unquote, that nobody complains about. I don't understand.
Well, they would they would argue that you can't be racist towards white people, right, Chris?
Well, I would argue that you're not allowed to redefine racism.
And I think that they would try to say, well, lots of words have undergone redefinition when it's become relevant in societal usage.
And I guess the question, if we were not streaming onto YouTube at this point, I would use a particular word which has changed its meaning a lot over the years, which is totally against the rules to say.
But yeah, I don't really hold that position. I think that the redefinition of racism just means that if you really want to do that, you're just opting into a scenario where most people don't know the meaning of the word that you're using.
See, but regardless of, there are, I would be willing to agree that there are actually people on the left movement that have stated death, not death to all whites, but whites should be killed. And Chris, you said you've seen that, right?
Oh yeah, I've seen a bunch of that.
Now, regardless of whether or not they're racist, you can't redefine you could. And the question is, are they redefining the word murder to mean only if you kill someone who is not in power? In other words, if you hold the power, is it okay to murder now? Do they really think that that's an argument, or is that something that they would even agree with, or will they justify their statements and back up that they actually think death is justifiable.
I hope not.
Yeah, shit.
I mean, I think maybe it's difficult to talk about this without somebody here who actually holds these views.
It's difficult to talk about this with somebody here who holds these views.
Touche.
So I'd say it's impossible to talk about this with someone's here who holds these views.
But what typically happens, Cam, is that if someone who holds the views counter to us were to enter this room right now, and if we say something offensive to them, or if they perceive that we are now championing Nazis or championing white supremacy, they just leave the conversation. Like
it doesn't look good that we're all happen to be white males here.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Reed, you're white?
But
Totally bad.
That is the messed up thing, though, is now I am put in a position to feel like because of my race and gender, my argument it has different value. It's not what I'm saying, it's who is saying it. What color is the skin that the argument is coming from? What gender is the skin that the argument is coming from? Now matters, and it seems antithetical to their main point.
Yeah, I think that they actually have a really good point, which they then expand in scope and make it wrong. So, like, I think that what you're pointing out there, Billy, it's an expansion of a good point that they make, that we should make an effort to listen to the experiences of people who are different to us, and that when making statements about people's experiences that are not like you do well, and it's a good idea to first engage with these people, find out what their life is like, look at statistics about their life and that type of thing. Now, I think that, I mean, maybe somebody here disagrees with that, but I think that's a good point, but they then expand it to you can't say true things about a group that you don't belong to, or your opinion has no value if you don't belong to that group.
So I think that's a good different distinction, is whether your argument is based off of experience or based off of facts. If you're saying, well, based on my experience, this isn't true, then your gender and your skin color will matter dramatically in what that really means. Because you will not experience something the same way that somebody who has a different skin color than you would experience it. But if your argument is independent of experience, it no longer holds water to judge the argument based off of the skin color or the gender or anything other than the argument itself. It should be a text thing, and you can't know who said it. That's what you should be pretending to evaluate. Is you just read a message, a text message from an unknown number.
Yeah, and
that argument.
In informal fallacies, they call it the genetic fallacy, right? Where, like, you say something is wrong because of the source of the argument as opposed to the content.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe.
I'm just getting tired of having excuse me, having to defend Milo all the time. Like this experience you had, Billy, this has like been my life on the internet for the last few months. Like,
see, I rarely engage with people. I rarely engage with people. This one time, because I actually, it was something I had a personal kind of connection to, like following PewDiePie. I'm like, it's really not fair what's happening to him. I'm going to defend him here. And then it blew up into that. And I was like, this is why I don't engage with people.
But what surprised me about you, Billy, was that you had a feeling of angst inside you, that it actually bothered you.
That's why I always avoided confrontation, was because of that. That feeling of angst was what I was afraid of happening, because I get that feeling when I perceive somebody viewing me negatively, especially when it's a misperception of me. That gives me angst. And as soon as I engaged in this conversation, it was immediately associating me with Nazis.
See,
I'm like, but that's not right.
But
That's
do you
not
guys
that's not me.
see? Maybe it's just my genetic makeup, but
Oh my goodness.
I don't get offended when it like if someone was to call you a racist or a Nazi, do you guys get offended?
Not if it's someone I have no idea who they are or what they
Yeah.
know about me.
Yeah,
It
Not
depends.
anymore.
If it was somebody who I highly respected and I valued their opinion, and I felt like it didn't jive with my actual views, it might bother me.
but that most of the time when we're having these conversations, either by text or even face to face, like on the internet, it's not like it's not typically with people who know you well. Like when you're doing these battles, I just like Chris. Do you feel any angst in you when you're having these conversations?
You're muted.
You're muted, Chris.
You're muted.
There you go.
Sorry, there we go. Not like not now, but when this whole thing started, like I saw this pushback start to happen to me, like personally, like when the DNC rolled over on Bernie Sanders. I started making posts on my Facebook that were like just anti-Hillary, and that's when the first like accusations of being a white right-wing conservative extremist started coming my way from people that I've known for like 20 years of my life. And that hurt. That hurt my feelings a lot to have people that have known me for over 2 decades tell me that they're disappointed that all of a sudden I've become a racist. And it didn't hurt me because like I think there's any truth to that, but it's like, really, like you've known me for this long and like you're going to take 2 decades of personal experience and ball it all up and throw it in the trash based on a Facebook post. And that was disturbing to me.
See, I still remember what Penn Jillette said. He said, "You should not fall in love with your favorite politician. Like you should do the opposite. You vote for someone, and then from that day forward, after you're done voting, and if he or she wins, you become critical. You start doubting everything that politician says and does. And it's very dangerous once you just, because when you fall in love with someone, and I use the word fall, you start to blindly follow. And that's very, very dangerous. And it gets to the religious aspect as well. Like when you stop doubting your religion, you should continually doubt it. You should continually doubt. If you're a Hillary Clinton fan, you should be hard on her and criticize her and question her. And same with Trump, if you're a Trump fan and Bernie fan or whatever. I don't know. And maybe I'm just dead inside, but this whole concept of loving someone so much that you stop questioning, I see the greater good in continually questioning even those that you respect.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
I'd say even more.
Unfortunately, though, in the context of like an election, that might not be a good strategy for supporters of a particular candidate to take, because of the nature of politics and
it's cheerleading, right? It's like how can you win an
Well,
election
Doug,
if there's no cheerleading?
I think you make a really good point in that, and I think that it's like summed up pretty good in both of their campaign slogans, right? Like Hillary Clinton is "I'm with her," "I'm with her," I, and Donald Trump was like "Make America Great Again." Like one of these positions is extremely egocentric.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, to be honest, I'm in a weird situation because I don't know what I am politically. I really don't.
Luckily, you're a Canadian, so you don't have to worry about it too much.
Yeah, I guess I am lucky in that sense.
Here's the weird thing is on a conscious level, I didn't think I identified with the left. Like not consciously. I knew that my positions would group with the left usually. And I would, if asked what I am, like liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, I would always say independent. And my reasoning is because taking sides leaves little room to think for yourself. That is my conscious state for the past at least 8 years. However, only now, once I've had this encounter with someone who I see as on the left, it was now the expectations were so widely blown apart that I realized even though I thought of myself as an independent and expressed myself as independent, I still had some blind identity with a side that and that built up expectations that therefore they were more likely to be correct. And only just recently did I realize that now even though I thought I was one way, I still wasn't the way that I valued. And now this is just exposing that even more, how important it is to not follow or fall in love with any particular thing, because it does blind you. Even if you think you haven't fallen in love with them, it still doesn't mean you haven't.
And it's all because of Milo. Milo was successful.
Yeah, that's kind of true. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, Cam. Greater good.
It is the rise that the rise against Milo and therefore against his speech, his ability to express himself, that that lost my favor and disconnected my identity with that group.
Do you guys see who entered? I don't.
Nope.
I can't see who.
Creepy. Who's creeping?
Who's here? And you messed up my screen, so I'm gonna have to boot you. But if I know you, let me know in the chat, and then you can I can make room. Yeah. I don't know. There's a reason why I don't talk politics very often on YouTube, is because it's almost dirtier than religion in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more polarized right now.
I'm just waiting to see what the left is going to say if after 4 years the economy of the United States booms, poverty is down, unemployment's even down further. What if there's even budget surpluses? Like, what if crime goes down? All these metrics of the well-being of a country, what are they going to say? And keep in mind, none of this might have nothing to do with Trump. It could just be the market forces in effect.
That's
Hello?
Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sweet.
You messed up my screen, though.
You're welcome.
So what do you have to say about this Milo thing?
Well, I pretty much said a lot of what I think already. Like, actually, one thing that I hadn't gotten to yet is I think a major issue with Milo and the kind of people defending him is that they're just too quick to generalize that the people attacking what it means to be liberal. I mean, on the one hand, I don't even think using like liberal and conservative really truly represents what people's positions are. Essence, to, on top of it, just be generalizing people based on it, I think is even more weak.
Hey, Steve, your connection's really poor. I can barely make you out.
Yeah. Sorry about that. You guys go ahead and talk.
So I can't hear him. Can you guys hear him?
I couldn't understand.
I caught some parts of it.
It's hard.
So I'm going to. Can you? Yeah, go ahead, Steve. Try one more time.
I'm in the garage, so my signal. I'm in the garage. My signal's gonna be bad.
Call back when it's on Wi-Fi.
Okay. Look at that. Came back to normal. As soon as I booted him, everything's fine. Sorry, Steve. But we couldn't make you out. But yeah, Steve, I think, is more. I think I get the impression he's more anti-Milo than us. Is that fair, Billy?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Seeing as we all seem to tacitly approve of Milo, I'm going to go ahead and say everybody is more anti-Milo than us.
Yeah, and Billy said earlier, the way to defeat Milo is not get emotional. And don't riot. Don't scream and yell like a bratty little kid. You listen to him talk calmly, and then during the Q&A session, you think long and hard of a great question on something that you disagree with that he said. And then let him answer, and you say, thank you for answering my question, and you step down.
So much of the popularity of Milo, like what makes it viral of Milo, is when he gets shut down from his ability to even express himself, and when he shuts down someone who didn't think through their question. So those are the two things. People who didn't ask a good question and didn't actually refute his arguments, trying to refute his arguments, and people rioting against him and trying to prevent him from actually talking. If you just let him come talk, and then you just asked a well thought out question, none of that is media worthy. It's not going to make it very far. What makes it far is when you get unreasonably emotional about it. That's exactly what Milo wants, and it's what he said he wants, and it's what he gave you instructions to do to counteract him if you don't want him to spread more. Like, you have all the information, and then they're just ignoring it.
Okay, well, let's get off. Go ahead, Christopher.
I've been doing battle intermittently with this like old friend of mine on Facebook who's like really into this whole Antifa punch a Nazi thing. And I've been trying to tell him like this exact message about Richard Spencer. If you want to shut down Richard Spencer, let that fucking idiot talk. Just let him share his terrible ideas. I don't know why anybody would want to silence anybody with bad ideas. Like, oh, bad ideas here. Tell everybody.
But see, I totally agree with you, except for the fact that I don't trust the general public enough to come up with good enough rebuttals to, like, people fall for the stupidest shit left, right, and center. It's frustrating, like, that we're not in a position where we can trust the general intelligence and competence of the American public to appropriately criticize these people and their stupid ideas.
This video is going to come back to haunt Cam if he ever runs for office.
I totally hear what you're saying, Cam, but my rebuttal to that would be like, when are you going to take the training wheels off your daughter's bike?
I never put training wheels on. No, literally.
Aha. You know, like, so, like, I feel like that moment when, like, as parents, we take the training wheels off, we're not certain that the kid's not going to crash and break their face. You know, And crashing and breaking your face on a bike is one of the best learning experiences a kid can have about how to not crash on a bike and break your face.
Yeah, it can be
And
helpful unless they die.
so to be clear, like, I think that people like Spencer should talk. We should let them talk, and we should have people, express what is wrong with their views in a clear and convincing manner. But I don't really have a trust for the general public to do that. Instead, what we get is people punching people in the face.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I don't know. Like I sort of agree with you, Cam. But it's kind of a dangerous statement to make because aren't you almost advocating sort of like an elitist type authoritarian government then? Because if the majority of the general populace are imbeciles, why do we let them vote?
I'm maybe not a good person to ask that because I'm not really convinced democracy is the best form of government. Like, my opinions about it are not very well defined, but I don't know. Like, this most recent election left me pretty disillusioned.
Yeah.
Like, do you think this most recent election was a good representation of democracy at work?
No, but democracy in practice. A perfect representation of democracy in practice.
Okay.
I know that might sound like an unusual distinction, but like, it obviously wasn't the ideal of a democratic process, but this is how we should expect democracy to play out in successive elections.
Okay, yeah, that's all I wanted to know pretty much is, do you think that this represents democracy effectively? If so, then you are consistent in saying democracy is not the best. But I think that some people would say that this isn't at all democracy. This is a complete punch in the face to democracy. In which case, if you say that this makes you think democracy is bad, well then, if you don't even think this was democracy in the first place, then you shouldn't be judging democracy. But yeah, you're consistent, so.
Yeah, I want democracy to be something better, and I think it can be, but I think it does require more from the populace than what the populace is currently given. Sorry, currently giving.
I totally agree with that.
I know some people have recommended that there be a test taken. And if you pass the test, then you have the right to vote. And then there's other people who say you have to own property in order to vote. And there's other people who say that you have to pay more taxes in than you receive in benefits in order to vote. Just like any membership, a membership club has fees. If you don't pay your fees, you don't get to vote. Do any of those ideas resonate with any of you guys?
No.
No, I think everyone should vote.
Not really to me. Like, I mean, the only idea that I've ever heard of / come up with that I think it has flaws, and I'm definitely not encouraging that America adopts it or anything. It's just an idea. Is having some kind of like public prediction record where you insert a prediction into the public record, a prediction that is able to be judged as true or false within a defined time period. And on the basis of your historical track record of being able to predict things with varying confidences, that is what gets used to decide how much weight your vote has in the democratic process.
Wow. So all the psychics and clairvoyants would be right up there.
Well, I suspect that they would be right down the bottom of the heap because they predict things with high confidence and routinely get it wrong. So it would be the expectation is that you would place a confidence on your prediction, and it's okay to place low confidences on predictions provided that it turns out over time you get those ones right with the probability according to the confidence you assigned it. So like if 30% of the time I get right the predictions that I make with 30% confidence, then that would be good for my, my voting power.
Yeah, the thing is when you're talking about a country of 350 million people that's so diverse, it's tough to predict anything about the social behavior or economics or anything having to do with that country with any degree of confidence.
Yeah, I agree. And I have no idea how you would put this system into practice or even really whether it's a good idea. But it does strike me as odd that people's opinions are valued equally regardless of their epistemology and the success of their epistemology and practice. So, but one thing that I would say is I think that within the system, there would have to be some way to vote on values that still has an impact. Like, because I think that it's possible for humans to genuinely have divergent values. So a lot of the time people presume that values are consistent across humanity, but even with the same level of knowledge, I suspect that it's possible for humans to value things differently. Like, I don't think that there's anything about the world that you can kind of learn more of to make you like chocolate ice cream more than vanilla. Sorry, that might sound really strange, but I think that there are things that we can genuinely disagree on because of our values. And I would like to see us still be able to have that opinion within a democracy, regardless of our epistemology.
Has there been studies done, and I don't know, I really don't know the answer to this, but is the United States getting dumber or smarter compared to history?
Smarter.
Based on what, Reed?
I'd have to look up the particular statistics, but that's what I get from like Steven Pinker's, the better angels of our nature and that type of thing.
How do you define smarter?
Let's say just IQ scores. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be the case.
Well, we should stay the same but for IQ score because it's dependent on the average.
Right, yeah, I know, by definition, yeah. But let's say
the IQ is always like being reset. Like we're like,
yeah,
we're upping the curve because we're getting so much smarter.
Like, I just want to know that, is there a metric in place where we can actually tell if the movie Idiocracy is actually taking place?
It's a great movie. Have you President Camacho? Yeah, dude, it's coming true. It's coming true. I think a great metric for that is just
has come.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, right. Like, I was listening to Trump today, man, and I was like just listening to it while I was doing dishes and stuff, and I was like, man, this motherfucker sounds like Camacho. But
I think
the education thing is a great metric. Is where do we rank in the world? Like, how do American kids do in math compared to Japanese kids today and 10 years ago, or German kids today and 10 years ago? If we want to see how we're doing as a nation that way, I think that's the only way.
Hey, Jesus is here.
Hey, I hear you guys.
Hey,
I don't
Doug.
see you yet.
Before you rearrange, I'm going to hop
Still don't
out,
see
so
you.
hopefully it'll just go into the right place. But see you guys. I'll probably be watching, but nice talking with you.
Here, hold on.
See you, Cam.
See you, Cam.
Hold on.
oh, he's going back in.
Musical chairs. Actually, I think this will work.
Doop-a-doop.
I don't get it. I don't see anyone.
Yeah.
You don't see anyone?
We
Can you hear us?
you and
Oh,
see
really?
you.
No, here, can I share my screen? Do you guys? Oh, I got to close my porn. No, I'm just kidding.
You can hear us though, right?
I can hear you guys. Yeah, that's weird. I don't.
We
Oh,
can
you know
see you.
why? I think it's because I'm not logged in. Hold on.
No, I don't think that should be an issue. What's with the beard, AJ? It's been a while since I've seen you, and it's like it's thick, and it's. What's your secret?
I haven't. I really haven't been shaving. I mean, it's not. It's not so much an accomplishment as it is a sign of my laziness, really.
But you still wear deodorant, right?
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah, that's so weird. I don't know why I can't see you guys.
Try refreshing one more time. That might work.
Is it open in a different screen? No.
But do you see the appear screen in front of you at all?
Yeah, well, I was going to share my screen, but I can't. Yeah, it's the space and the trees and the little aurora borealis.
Okay, well, we can all see you, I think.
Okay, I'll be right back. 1 second.
Yeah, I can totally see AJ. Weird.
So for those of you who don't know, AJ is a self-avowed. AJ, would you say you're a self-avowed liberal or not?
No, not anymore. I used to kind of think that, but
Nice.
When did you change? When did that drop?
Visit to the Trump Tower.
no. I would probably say the last 3 or 4 years. So the last couple of years of Obama going into Trump, and then Trump really, I think, kind of showed that I do not identify in a lot of ways with the people that I thought I did. So
Yeah. And for those listening, AJ, the Jesus guy that you see, is he's the guy who made the bet with me that I bet him that Hillary would win, and he bet that Trump would win. And the loser had to dress up as a woman on stream, and I did so. I fulfilled my.
you're on YouTube Live right now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did I forget to mention that?
I mean, I don't care, but I might, now that I know that, let me see if I could at
definitely
least...
going to show the porn.
Now you're going to shave?
No. I want to see if I could see myself through your live feed, and then I can.
Oh,
at least
yeah,
look at
but
that.
it'll be delayed. It's like 10 seconds.
Like 15 seconds.
Well, I'm not
Yeah.
going to use sound just to kind of see
Yeah.
you guys.
You
At
miss
the very
me.
least.
You miss my face,
You're-
don't you?
Your pretty mugs. Let's see. Give it a second. Hopefully, I don't make this shit slow.
Yeah, just go
Or at
to
least too
just go
slow.
to Pine Creek, and then you'll see the live thing.
I'm at you right now. It's taking a second. It's doing the little spinning wheel.
What is it with you LA guys and poor connections? Like Billy's internet was down, and it seems like Reed's doing okay though.
I'm okay.
Let's see. Okay, here we go. All right. So, okay, I see Billy, I see Reed, I see Chris, I see Doug, and I see myself. Okay. So now I at least know who's here. For the longest time, I only could hear Chris.
He didn't even
and,
know whose voices he was.
Someone's here.
So AJ, tell everybody why the left, especially, should like Milo.
I don't necessarily know if they should like the dude. I'm a little bit partial just because I grew up in a atmosphere of comedy, offensive comedy. Lenny Bruce, Richard Pryor, George Carlin, all of these people that really tried to desensitize a lot of the mainstream, the main public to a lot of things that were essentially taboo. And by doing this, it really kind of helped facilitate a lot of much needed conversation. So I really kind of think that Milo in a much similar way is kind of doing that. I don't necessarily think you should embrace him, but I think you should take him a little bit more seriously with regards specifically to the arguments that he makes, not the silly trolling that he does, but much like kind of how it was with Trump, where people just kind of dismiss the person as, oh, he's a racist, bigot, I'm not going to address anything he says. Other people listen to him, and because he speaks in a way that really grabs people's attention and really plays to their emotions, they listen to him and they absorb a lot of what he says. So rather than try to assail him with character attacks. I think the most productive thing the left can do is address the arguments that he makes in a systemic way to deconstruct them as best as possible.
In a civil way, yeah.
In a very civil way.
Yeah, I agree with your desensitization aspect. Like, I don't know if you saw my video I did, the I'm Offended Atheist Challenge. So the last video I did, basically I came up with 20 statements that purposely was I'm trying to offend atheists. And they were supposed to rank each statement on a scale of 0 to 10 and then add up their score. And then I did the same for Christianity. Really offensive stuff. And,
Okay.
And I think that a lot of the problems in communication is that people get their panties in a wad. It's like, relax. Don't get so emotional about this stuff. Just listen to the arguments, think about it, come up with your own, and talk about it. So I agree with you. I think Milo is great for that. He's forcing people to face their demons in a lot of ways of looking themselves in the mirror, and he's exposing so much hypocrisy. It's unbelievable.
I think so. It's also nice to know who amongst us would be willing to use violence to promote their own ideas or beliefs, or to silence others for theirs.
Bingo. That's the key difference. They're not trying to promote their beliefs at all.
Well, and the thing, though, is, won't some on the left say that just verbally talking is a form of violence?
Some certainly do, but I think they're in a lot of ways really mistaken, and they lack a proper understanding of political history, the philosophy of freedom of speech, what it means to actually be able to say things that hurt people. And I mean, one of the things, even in our country, one of the things that we have is we have a law against an incitement to a riot, but that is very narrowly tailored to be imminent physical riot right there. So one of the things that John Stuart Mill talks about is, he says that, and he's one of the most free speech types of people. He says he finds it perfectly acceptable to go in a public forum, in a town hall, and say, you know what, before I get to that, let's suppose that you have a farmer that's in charge of producing all the corn for the community. And this farmer decides that, you know what, I'm going to pretend like I'm producing less corn than I am. I'm going to stock up on corn and charge an exorbitant amount to basically screw over all of the townspeople. What John Stuart Mill says is, he says, I totally support people going into a town hall and saying that this guy is doing all of these things. He's screwing us over. He's an asshole. We need to do something about that, and get people riled up and angry to do something about it. But where he says it crosses the line is if those people were to go to that person's farm, stand on their property, and make the same type of statements, because that right there is an imminent threat to a riot. Whereas doing it in a town hall doesn't have that same factor. And so a neo-Nazi saying something on the internet or saying something in a video, kill all Jews, is not the same as going into a synagogue with a group of angry people saying, kill these Jews here. That's different.
Okay, I gotta ask you a personal question, AJ. Since you left liberalism when, like, shortly before Trump was elected, or a year before, how many friends have you lost?
I wouldn't really say that I lost too many. I mean, in a lot of ways, and this is one thing that Dave Rubin talks about.
Wait, before we need to establish a baseline. How many did you have first?
2. One of the things I like what Dave Rubin says is, he says he didn't really change that much in a lot of his beliefs, and I wouldn't really say that I changed much in mine either. One of the things that changes, the people that call themselves liberals have really changed a lot of their focus and a lot of their direction. But for me, I feel like I'm just as passionate about human rights, freedom of speech, the best for society, the best for all of these people, the best for education, in a number of different ways. It's just necessarily the ways that it's being talked about, the ways that it's being attempted to be addressed, I don't necessarily see myself relating with or identifying anymore. But I wouldn't say I really lost too many friends, except for the past couple of maybe the past week or so, when I've been clarifying Milo's position a little bit to some people, where they get pissed off and think I'm a white supremacist sympathizer, and then they decide, oh, I'm gonna not be friends with you on Facebook. But I don't necessarily know if that's a terrible loss in that respect, or really having anything to do with my political ideology.
How many conversations do you think you've had, either in Facebook or face-to-face, on this topic of free speech, Milo, liberal, conservative? Like, you seem like you're a talkative guy. Like, and how many of
it's one of the main things that I talk about.
Okay, and what percentage would you say that you get back from the people on the left where it's been a constructive conversation? How many times does that actually happen, where you and the other person are civil, and they say something that make you think, and you say thank you, and they and vice versa? Or is it just a train wreck every time?
No, I would say it really kind of depends on the person. I'm able to talk with a whole bunch of liberals that are very pro big government in a number of ways, when it comes to taxes, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to social benefits like Social Security or welfare. And I'm able to talk about these things oftentimes without a problem. When someone like Milo gets brought up, normally I wouldn't necessarily say Milo, but someone making similar arguments to him, like Christina Hoff Sommers or Thomas Sowell or Larry Elder, we're able to address the conversation directly. Now, in certain settings, if I'm talking with someone that's passing out socialist material to try to get people to abandon their political ideology in favor of socialism, if I have a conversation with them about certain things, I get called a KKK member and an evil person and someone similar to Hitler.
When they call you these names, is there any angst, any negative feeling inside you at all?
I would say the main form of negative feeling that I get is really one just more of disappointment, just because I'm so willing to engage in the arguments themselves and address what's actually being said. And to have someone basically, I look at it almost like if we're about to play a game of chess and you just knock all the pieces off the table, I'm like, okay, we could have had a productive game, but that happened. So I'm just disappointed more than like I feel personally attacked.
Yeah, because that's one thing I've always appreciated about you, AJ, is that it seems like, and you and I have had some heated conversations in the past. Well, not heated, but just very intense. And but it seems like no matter what, we are friends in the end, and it's still civil, and we don't let our emotions get the best of us. And I truly believe that if we want to have progress of any sort, and I'm just labeled as a cold-hearted bastard when I say this, but we need to deal with these emotions and these knee-jerk reactions to things. And I don't know what's the best way to do that. I suggested in the Facebook chat that we need to practice. We need to practice being insulted. We need to get in a room and just have people tear us to shreds, and be able to cope with it without just lashing out.
I agree. I really like the comparison that's made when it comes to dialogue and martial arts, because I really think in a lot of ways, when you study philosophy, when you think about atheism or Christianity or women's rights or politics in general, when you're thinking about it, or when you're first when you're thinking about it, in a lot of ways, I look at that as like studying a martial arts book or listening to a martial arts podcast or watching someone else do martial arts. And then it comes to the point where you're discussing this thing, you're discussing an idea with someone that agrees with you, kind of like sparring, where you're not really getting the full effect of what it means to go through all of the different moves, but you're getting a pretty good understanding. But I think what a lot of people lack is the actual competition part of it, the actual and not even necessarily in a ring with someone else, but almost as like a street fight type of a thing. You can study something all you want, but what really matters is when you're caught off your guard and someone's trying to fight you outside of a bar or something, that's when everything that you learned needs to come into play. And a lot of times people that have done all this studying, when it, like, to use martial arts as an analogy, when it comes to the actual fight, they forget all of their training and just start flailing their arms, flailing about, and not necessarily being very effective, where they know everything that needs to be done. But in that moment, when they're pushed in a corner, they essentially abandon all of it and go to a more primitive way of responding.
Love it.
Yeah, well, and I guess that's part of human nature, right? I'm sure we evolved that way, and I guess there was a purpose for it.
Well, that's seems a bit fallacious.
Well, I mean, like, as far as the rustling of the leaves in the savannah,
Yeah.
you kind of get that knee-jerk reaction. There's imminent trouble here, and so in the past, it's probably saved our lives. But now that we're civilized, at least most of us, we can start to think about these things more.
Yeah, I think it's really important to try to get yourself in a corner in a lot of ways, to be in a position to have the opportunity to really put into practice all of the things that you're absorbing, all of the things that you're learning to do, and all the things that you're learning not to do. Because that's really one of the few genuine ways to really demonstrate that you are fully comprehending and accepting what it is that you're learning. And I don't think a lot of people do that. I think a lot of people say, oh yeah, when it comes to not hurting people for their ideas, I think that's a great thing because I'm an atheist, except for those neo-Nazis. Those guys got to get it because they're assholes and they want doom for everyone. That seems to be in a situation where it's like, well, you just went to the metaphorical flailing about rather than sticking to your martial arts training, so to speak.
Dan Kohlenberg's asking, have you guys changed your fiscal, social, or both in your conservatism? I don't think any of us. Well, does anyone here identify as a conservative all around?
I wouldn't say so. I would say there's a bit of confusion into what conservative means as a definition, but I would say no.
Yeah, I think what changed I went through a change not in my actual values, but in how I had identified my values. As in, I thought that my values were, I was comfortable saying my values aligned with the left, and now I'm no longer comfortable saying that. But my values themselves have not changed. I just realized that what I thought of what the left was has changed.
I got a lot out of watching Ben Shapiro on Dave Rubin a few weeks ago make the statement, yeah, sure, I'm a classical liberal. Like that moment was very telling to me. It's like liberal conservative is now a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, yeah. I didn't know who Ben Shapiro was until I just saw some random video of him responding to a Q&A, and I was like, I liked everything he had to say, and he was really quick. And
he's awesome.
Yeah, so then he went into something about abortion, but that wasn't the main point, so he didn't go into detail. But I'm like, now I want to hear what he has to say about abortion.
He says a lot about abortion. He's a lot that people on the right point to say, this is why we oppose abortion.
Mm-hmm.
He's known for, when he debates people, he's known for really, one of his focuses, his strategies, is to just humiliate them, is to use a lot of emotion, appeals to emotion in a lot of ways for the audience, just to make them look like these evil piece of shit people. He really humanizes fetuses in a lot of ways. He's a bit religious, but he I would say only partly uses that in his abortion arguments. He's fascinating. Mm-hmm. He also gets a lot of shit because he's really vocal about calling transgender people people with mental illnesses.
Say that again? Ben Shapiro says that?
Yeah, Ben Shapiro says transgender people are people with mental illnesses.
Does Milo say that? Because we were discussing if he actually comes out and says that, or does he just imply it?
Oh yeah, no. Milo definitely thinks that transgender people have mental disorders.
Now,
And go ahead.
I was just going to ask. It seems to me that the science doesn't even know what causes people to be heterosexual or homosexual. It's not really clear what causes one's sexuality.
Yes. One of the things that Milo and Ben point to, though, are studies on gender dysphoria, which he says that people that are transgender have. He says that if you're transgender, you are experiencing discontent with your identity and your assigned birth. Gender dysphoria is literally the DSM recognized, the diagnostic whatever manual for mental illnesses or for just psychiatry, is recognized as a mental illness of being discontent between one's identity and their assigned gender. And so he says that if you're transgender, you have gender dysphoria. He points to studies that show that people with gender dysphoria have atypical brains. Their brains are structured differently than people that don't have gender dysphoria, and says that, okay, if you're born with a different brain and this different brain causes you to feel psychologically in distress in some way, you've got a mental illness. He then points to people that don't have gender dysphoria and claim to be transgender, and says that these people are really just gender nonconformists that are either masculine females or really effeminate men, but they're not transgender. That seems to be their position.
So, okay, but is this a situation then where they could be right and it just makes people feel bad?
I would say so. I don't necessarily. I mean, like I said, a lot of it seems to be semantics. One of the things that I find interesting, and it plays off of a joke that I heard about minorities, but it's kind of similar, where a lot of transgender people in some ways seem to be reluctant to say that it is a mental illness, even though some do, because by saying it's a mental illness, they actually get medical treatment for it and healthcare to cover it, essentially. But some are reluctant to saying it's a mental disorder. And one of the things that I think of is, why do they not want it to be considered a mental illness? Do they for some reason have a negative stigma associated with mental illnesses, which is something that in a lot of ways I think people on the left are trying to overcome. It's not a bad thing to have a mental illness, so why is it have a negative connotation to say that transgender people have mental illnesses?
That's actually what I was just thinking, is coming from the left point, like coming from that far left point of view, the people who will criticize others for using ableist language are then now they see something bad with somebody saying that transgender someone who's transgender has a mental illness.